The Syrian air passenger plane has been intercepted on suspicions of having non-civilian cargo. What has been cited as indications of that?
You know, I'm frightened about this entire episode. And it comes on the heels of pronouncements by various members of NATO that any challenge to this member of NATO, or particularly Turkey, will be considered a challenge against the entire alliance, and, war follows, etc. This has been very, out there the last few days. You have the report that came from RT was the only report that I saw of it, actually, disclosing the fact that the incident last week of an alleged attack by Syria upon Turkey was actually performed by NATO weapons, or NATO-designed weapon from Turkey, that was delivered to the, the NATO troops on the ground fighting the Syrian government. What concerns me is this sounds an awful lot like the reason the United States went to war in World War I. The interdiction of ships from the United States to England and others in Europe by the Germans ended up being the reason the United States got involved in World War I. This act by Turkey against an airplane, a civilian airliner from Moscow to Syria, is an act of war. And I'm glad that Russia isn't treating it that way yet, but the fact is, under international law, this is an act of war, and that Turkey would be emboldened to commit this act makes me very nervous about what's going to happen going forward, and especially what kind of additional acts will be committed by NATO members against the rest of the world, hoping, or we're hoping anyway, that it doesn't lead to, a world war, or at least a wider conflict.
Well, you mentioned that this is a possible act of war, and in fact, Syrian officials are saying that this is a violation of the Convention on International Civil Aviation. As this plays out, it has the makings of a major international incident, doesn't it?
Well, I think it already is. And you can look at, going back over the last, let's say, from the post-World War II period to now, had the Soviet Union done such a thing to the West at different points in history, there would be wall-to-wall coverage of this incident as obvious need to have a nuclear war with the Soviet Union across the United States and Western Europe. Obviously, this particular incident doesn't rise to that level, but it is illegal. It is an act of war, and if anyone were to decide to, respond in kind, we end up going over this huge, waterfall of, just cascading events that leads to death of our species, really. I mean, this is crazy. I have no idea what the thinking is behind this, other than to try to intimidate everyone involved on the other side of this NATO adventure in Syria, that either back off or we're going to take it to the max. I think that's the signal that Washington is trying to send, because Turkey isn't doing this without an okay from Washington. And it's frightening that that's actually how aggressively they're playing at this point, especially, a couple of weeks before an election. Usually they try to keep this stuff toned down before an election and save it for after the election. So I hope something worse isn't coming after November 6th.
All right. Appreciate your thoughts. Don DeBar, anti-war activist and journalist, joining us from Ossining, New York. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, too.